I think Blessing was going to be the first person to speak, wasn't it? So I don't know, is Blessing it's around still? I can't see her name here. No. Or Queen, is Queen? Okay, so we might have to change the order a little. It looks like, Philip, we're going to have to put you up front.
I think I had seen Queen in the, unless I'm wrong.
I'm looking at the participant list and I can't see. No, I can't see.
Yeah, I did see Queen. Maybe she's dropped off.
Yeah, I saw her.
If you can hear us, Queen, could you unmute and actually just introduce yourself? If you're there.
Otherwise, I'm happy to go first. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Thank you for everyone for your patience. As we know, these are some remarkable times that we're going through, and just getting used to this new technology of having these conversations virtually is it's a new skill set that I think that our children will start to think is normal, and never knowing that life existed without Zoom and Teams and Skype and all these other kind of platforms. But thank you, Philip, you're back. So
what do you want me to share? Just my experience of COVID so far in general. And I did have COVID, and I've had the vaccine as well.
Okay, well, I mean, both would be useful, I think. I mean, we are focusing on the vaccine with today's session, but that might provide a nice backdrop depending on time. So.
Well, the only reason I'm asking.
Okay, let me.
What might be useful if I have admin control, and then while you're speaking, I can look to see, or June, if you can do that, one of us.
Yeah, I'm doing all of that, Philip. So yeah, feel free to share your story.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So yeah, I guess my experience with COVID was I actually had it in early December, and my wife as well. We both had it together at the same time. And, you know, lucky enough for me, my symptoms were relatively mild, but, you know, it was still a very scary experience because I started feeling the shortness of breath. And, you know, many of us who have had things like chest crisis before know, you know, how tricky it can be if your breathing is compromised. So, you know, it was a scary experience, but luckily I was able to get through it with reasonably mild symptoms. So, for me, you know, even just that experience of having it, and, you know, I've had experiences of a number of people, not in my direct family, but, you know, people within my kind of family and friendship circle who've experienced deaths and have had deaths of, you know, parents, deaths of people in their community. And, you know, I know of a good number of people, even young people. I know a young guy, 35 years old, who died a couple of weeks ago with COVID. And so for me, I was always very much like, you know, when the vaccine comes out, I was apprehensive and looking at, you know, well, what's the science behind it? How did they get this vaccine to market so quickly? All of these questions I had. But there was a really good research and a really good talk. I think I shared it on the group. It was the Sickle Cell Society had done like a kind of question and answer session with, I think, a hematologist from, was it St. Thomas's? I think I'll share it in the chat.
She's from Guy's.
From Guy's, yes, fantastic. And I thought that was fantastic, and it really helped clarify a lot of the questions I had. And yeah, for me, on that basis, I felt a lot more comfortable. And I also felt like after seeing people dying with COVID, I felt like, you know what, it's the lesser of the evils. You know, if you know, you get COVID and we know how fatal COVID can be, I don't think the vaccine is going to be fatal. You know, so I felt to myself, you know what, that's 100% of two evils, and we have to take it. I had to take it. So I had my first dose. I think, was it last Thursday that we tried this call, and yeah, That was that very evening I had my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. In general, I didn't have any real adverse reaction. Had a sore arm and, kind of general kind of maybe a little bit of, let's say, fatigue the next day. But in general, I was fine. I didn't have any adverse reaction to it. And hopefully it's we can have the second dose coming up quite quickly. I know there's been delays for some people on between first and second doses. But for me, what I was surprised about, because I had it in Tottenham, and in Tottenham, I was actually surprised that actually it was a really diverse audience of people getting the vaccine. The queue was long. It was a long queue. There was lots of people there. And everybody seemed like, you know what, let's just have this vaccine. Like, if this is a way to get back to normality, everybody seemed really positive about it. And, wanting to, just have it, people from all backgrounds, all races. So that was quite encouraging to see, because I know within the Black community, using that term, there is this skepticism around it. And I would just encourage everybody to, do proper research, listen to people that you trust and sources of information that you trust. And yeah, make your own mind up, but don't make your mind up based on information from, I don't know, dubious sources, I'll call them, or people who are not scientifically qualified. That's my advice on it.
Well, we're definitely going to come back to those issues, and we'll have some.
Funny enough, I just want to say something. He mentioned something about how fast.
Sorry,
okay.
Shagun, can you wait for 1 second?
Okay.
So thank you, Philip. We'll definitely come back to those issues, and we have Dr. Dimitri to actually help us to clear up some of those myths. One of the things I wanted to ask, though, if you don't mind, is when you found out that you had COVID, how did you find out, and how did you feel? What was that moment, with your sickle cell, and finding out, that you was positive? What was going through your minds and your wife's?
Yeah. So for me, I was isolating quite a lot throughout the year last year. And when I think 2nd of December, there was a bit of like unlocking when the government said, okay, you can go out and do your Christmas shopping and go into packed supermarkets and stuff like this. So, I was part of this. I went to the office, I went out. And so I think that was maybe when, I contracted it. But yeah, I guess it was fear, it was panic. I mean, the other thing is that I know how I feel when I'm having a crisis. So to some extent, I also knew that whatever was happening in my body wasn't as bad as a crisis, or it wasn't as, it didn't feel to me as bad as having a severe chest crisis. I felt like I was restricted in my breathing, but also I know how to breathe through like difficulties of having like, the acute chest crisis. So for me, I guess having had those experiences to some extent may have enabled me to kind of understand that it's just one breath at a time, and you just try and take a deep breath, you try and hold in the oxygen and release it very slowly, and then do it again, and just breath by breath. Anyone who's been through a crisis, it's almost one breath at a time. It's not, you can't think too far ahead, and if you panic, you get into more trouble. So, for my wife, Jamie, she was actually tested negative at the same time when I had positive test. But then her symptoms came in a couple of days later. And so she was pretty bad, vomiting and, having like, quite severe nausea, dizziness. So she was worse than me. But yeah, for us in general, our symptoms were mild. Neither of us had to think about going to hospital at any stage. So for me, it was, yes, that initial panic, but then realizing, hey, you know what? I've been through a chest crisis before. I've had kidney failure before. I've had serious events happen before, and I've come through them, and I felt I could come through it. So
in contrast with that, having a vaccine afterwards seems, I take it, pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, knowing I've got good friends whose dads have passed. I've got one of my brother-in-law, his dad passed from COVID. People are dying. You know, it's real. You know, people are really dying. There are people today I know in hospital who are fighting, you know, for their lives, you know, right now as we speak. So, you know, having a vaccine, I know, you know, it's not a perfect circumstances in terms of, you know, perhaps, you know, it's not a perfect circumstances. And I know there's always this disclaimer that they say where it's like, you know, approved for use in, did they say in emergency situations or?
It's a phrase, yeah.
Used in an emergency type of thing. So, you know, they always put that disclaimer there. But for me, you know, I'm willing to put my money on the scientists at this stage, even much more so than Boris and his.
Thank you very much. Segun, can you please hold that question that you had, because we have Blessing here now, and I know she can't stay for the duration of the whole event. So Blessing, it's wonderful to see you. If you can unmute and share some.
Sorry, I was late.
No, no apologies. This is Zoom. There's no such thing. It's all the same madness. So, so would you mind sharing your experiences?
Okay. So I decided to have the vaccination as soon as I was told that there was even one available. There was no way that I was going to risk not having a vaccination and leaving it up to chance. I had to carry on working during the first and second lockdown because I'm a teacher. So I was still going into schools, and I was still, I'm sorry.
My phone's about to die.
Shh. Can you go and sit down, please? Sorry. So I kind of realized that if I wanted to carry on working and finishing my teaching degree, I was going to have the vaccine as soon as I could. I had been ill a couple of times during the lockdowns, and every time I got very sick, it was always a worry that it was COVID, which just sent me into a panic, and I was constantly having to have COVID tests. I was really lucky they were always negative, but it still meant that I was ill with something. And because of COVID, I couldn't actually get it treated, which just kind of compounded my decision that as soon as the vaccination was available to me, I would be having it, which is what I did. I had it as soon as I could.
Now, one of the things that we've been hearing quite a lot, there's been cases in Canada, etc., where people have the vaccine and their behavior shifts as they start walking around as if they're immune when actually transmission is still taking place. How have you felt after taking the vaccine?
I'm still very aware of the fact that immunity, one, doesn't come that quickly. Two, I'm not going to push my luck. You know, I had the vaccination. My arm was a bit numb. I had a slight headache, no nausea or anything like that. Nothing, no major side effects, which was really lucky because I was actually having a flare up of my autoimmune disorder, which usually means that I react to medications really badly, but I didn't react to the vaccination as well. And I've carried on doing everything correctly. I've carried on having, you know, using all of the precautions that they've set out, face masks, washing my hands regularly, using hand sanitizer. I take sanitation, like wipes out with me and stuff like that. And I try to make sure that I keep everything as clean as possible. And I try not to interact too closely with people, just to keep things in line with what they've recommended. Just because you've had the vaccination doesn't mean you're immediately immune. It increases your chances of, you know, decreases, sorry, your chances of passing it on, which is great. But that doesn't mean that you can walk around as if you're bulletproof. That's not how vaccinations work.
You had to say a message in closing to someone who was hesitant, who was thinking, you know, I'm not going to take this vaccine. I mean, what would be, you know, and that's their choice. What would be your words to kind of like help them to make a decision on what they're going to do?
Well, I've had this conversation quite a few times, actually. And every time I've explained that we already face so much adversity. We already have so much stacked against us. Some people might not have severe reaction to COVID, and they are very lucky. Other sickle patients may not be so lucky, and our immune systems are already compromised. Our spleens are not, doing the best work. And it doesn't seem wise to me to risk your health on some half-baked, conspiracies. It just doesn't make any sense. Well, not when we are a community that relies so heavily on science. We already rely on science. We rely on transfusions, exchange transfusions. We rely on machines, medication, vaccinations already. Most people take penicillin daily, folic acid, all these things. These are all interventions. And for me, a vaccination is just another type of intervention. It's another way of protecting yourself against a disease that you don't have to battle if you don't have to.
Thank you very, very much for sharing. I've just seen a question come up asking, and I think which vaccines you both had. I think Phillips said that it was the Pfizer vaccine. Was that right? Yes. So Phillips had the Pfizer one. Do you know which one you had, Blessing?
I had the AstraZeneca one.
Okay. And I think from last week, what Dr. Dimitri told us is that actually, irrespective of which one it is, and I think I mentioned, really there's not much choice, which you decided which one you're going to get.
I wasn't able to decide for myself
Yes.
which one I had. No, they just the only thing they did ask me was if I had any allergic reactions to things unexplained, and no, so there was no reason why I couldn't have the vaccination, and I had it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to remind people that if they are on the 4th tier for the to have their vaccination, they can call their GPs and ask to be moved up the tier if they fear for themselves, catching COVID or anything like that. They can actually request to be moved up, which is what I did.
Thank you very much. No,
Okay. Sorry.
Thanks, Blessing.
He's just being a bit of a demon over here. Oi. Okay.
You might need to mute, Blessing. I don't know if Queen has turned up. Is she? Are you there, Queen?
I am. I'm here.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Hello.
Good to see you, and good to hear you as well.
Yeah, you too.
Now, I just wanted to ask you if you would mind sharing your experiences, your story.
Okay, so I am a pharmacist and I'm also a patient. I had my vaccine very early on because I worked in the front line, and I actually did catch COVID as well. And like, everyone's been saying, I had very mild symptoms, just, I don't know, temperature, I had a temperature, a little bit of a cold. I recovered very quickly, but I do have patients that have actually died from COVID, and these are sickle cell patients. So I do know those people that are not so lucky. I had the Pfizer vaccine, yeah. I don't know what else you want me to say, but that's my experience.
No, that's fine.
I'm not a big talker.
No, that's okay. I mean, that's my job to tease it out of you. But no, I mean, how did you feel about the choice of taking the vaccine? I mean, I'm one of those people who tries to do everything natural, who doesn't like to take any intervention unless it's right at the last moment. And so I know there's a lot of people who feel like, we take interventions when we have to, but if we can avoid it, we'll try go the herbal route. Yeah. So, I mean, how did you feel when you made that decision? Actually, I'm on the front line. I'm going to take this vaccine. What was going through your mind to kind of like make you do it?
That's a very good question. To be honest with you, I'm not a vaccine person as well. I'm really into like my naturals and my remedies and stuff. But being medical, I do understand the importance of vaccine in our society. It's very important. When I gave it to my kids when they were little to have the MMR and all these vaccines we give to children, it's very critical. So for me, it was a no-brainer for me to actually choose to go and get a vaccine. I prefer not to, but with the way the world is set up, it's quite adamant that it's quite important. It's something that we need.
Thank you. That's a really honest and good answer there. I mean, if there was something you would add to people who are kind of thinking to themselves, actually, I'd rather take the risk without. I'd rather kind of like, keep shielding because that's what's needed, and see if I can rough this out because I'm hearing about these mutations and I'm worried about, having to take vaccines for the rest of my life. What would you say to them? And I'd like your answer in the context of what you've been seeing on the front line with people with sickle cell passing. I mean, what would be your advice?
Well, I think what I've got to say to that is COVID is not going away. You know, just the way we coexist with the flu, that's most likely what we're going to end up with COVID. And as we can see, it's a lot more fatal than the influenza. So it's something that I would say it's very, very important, you know, to take this vaccine. We can't return to normality without it. And even if we do return to, if you do want to shield, and a couple of months down the line, they open up, you know, the lockdown again, and you go out and you catch it, you can catch it twice. You know, I've known people that have had it several times. You don't want, you're gambling with your life. You know, it is actually a gamble, and there is no point to take that risk when, you know, most of us take hydroxycarbamide. That is a cytotoxic drug. You know, so when you're taking a cytotoxic immunosuppressant drug, a lot of people do exchange transfusion. That's a major procedure you're having done. So for you to say you don't want a vaccine where there's very mild side effects, the technology of this vaccine has been around for ages, so it's nothing new. We already have a spine for creating vaccine already, from making influenza and the SARS. Even the COVID is not new. You know, we had the SARS in a couple of years ago that just disappeared. So we've had the knowledge from that to be able to create the vaccine. And when we're making a vaccine, the two most important thing that we look for is it safe and is it effective? And this vaccine is proven to be both. So I really don't have anything negative to say about it. There is a lot of, you know, talks about there are nanoparticles in there because we have a specific gene to target it, then it would change our gene. And to be honest, that doesn't make sense. And I've researched all of that. It doesn't work like that.
For someone who says they don't have much to say, you've been absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much. I'm wondering if Michael is with us, and I said I'd go back to Segun. You had a question, so if Michael's with us, could you get ready to share your story? And Segun, if you can make the question very quickly, so we can continue the stories and then bring in our guest, Dr. Dimitri.
It wasn't actually a question. What I wanted to confirm what the other gentleman was saying is, they made a statement about how people were worried about how fast this vaccine was made. But what nobody was talking about is there's already a backlog of knowledge. Like the people that started vaccination 50 years ago, what they know, they've passed on to this generation. We've got faster computers, faster processing, faster everything now. So if it took 10 years to roll out vaccines before, they can do it in a quarter of the time now. So if the world has been able to produce a vaccine for this within a year, it's possible, because what they're not thinking about is, like, all of us are talking on Zoom right now. We're scattered all over the country and we can see each other. We can recognize each other's voice, and technology has moved on. So nobody has said that. So all the scaremongering that people were putting out there, people were not. There was a sister that made a statement. She used a word. She said, "We're not speaking to each other with an intellectual discussion." Most people, like our pharmacists, our pharmacist has just spoken now. She just mentioned procedures that people are taking that's actually more dangerous than what this is. You understand? So I just wanted to just put that one in there. It wasn't a question, because I've taken mine, and yeah.
So no, you made some beautiful points there, and I'm sure we're going to come back to them, because of course, the acceleration of the program, Operation Warp Speed, as the former President Trump called it, has raised suspicions, and I'm sure we can discuss those issues afterwards. And there were some interesting questions about continuous vaccine boosters, which we can ask to someone who's far more knowledgeable on this than me, Dr. Dimitri. So I know we have two more speakers who want to share their stories. So is Michael?
One more time. It's just Michael. Ugo can make it today.
Oh yes, Oleander did mention to. Sorry. Yes, I haven't updated my.
Cool.
Michael,
everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. So I'm Michael. I'm one of the mentors under the Sickle Cell Society Peer Mentoring Program, for those of you that are aware of it. I had my Pfizer vac, I think 3 weeks ago, and I was actually very pleased when I received the message from my surgery offering it to me as early as they did. So since the start of lockdowns nearly a year ago now, if not a bit more, I've been in a situation where a lot of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis outside of this situation have had to carry on. My wife is a key worker, and so she carried on going to work throughout the main parts of this crisis, and taking the tube and whatnot, and going to look after children, young children who are most likely interacting with other people. And recently, my son has also been going to school as normal. And so for me, it was pretty much a no-brainer as to why I need to take the vaccine for a start, as I was continuously, out and about, taking my son to school, as I still do every morning and every afternoon, and just generally interacting with other people because I've had to do it. And so for me, it was just pretty straightforward in terms of why I would feel the need for an additional protection over what I've already got, or what I don't already have. We both suspected we had COVID probably 6 months ago. We had different symptoms. My wife had more of a conventional flu, and I experienced dizziness, but we haven't been tested for antibodies yet, and we'll do that soon. But ultimately, just thinking back, with my experience with sickle cell and the time that I spent in hospital probably nearly 10 years ago, but with an infection, with pneumonia, in fact, and how dire it was, and how close I was to the brink off the back of what was initially a very simple infection. To me, it just made sense. In terms of people's concerns about the source of the vaccine, and just addressing the speed of time it's taken to develop it. I mean, I echo what Shagun says. I mean, we have the resources. It's not a perfect process. We know that vaccines usually take a lot more time to develop, but I also echo what Queen has said in terms of the starting point that we're at, as this is COVID-19, it's not COVID-1. So there is a bit of a backlog in terms of, or there's at least track record and experience of similar kinds of coronaviruses. In terms of the conspiracy theories and whatnot, I mean, I'm not a person who takes things at face value, but I do believe that in our community, sometimes we focus on the wrong things to be suspicious of. And prior to the vaccine, I obviously did my own research, and I made myself comfortable, irrespective of my personal situation, comfortable that it was something I wanted to take, and that I would take it up when the opportunity came.
That's a really important point, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, you said it was a no-brainer right at the beginning, and many of the concerns I hear are quite valid. Shagun spoke about the short development. There's also the lack of the testing time, so people are concerned, sometimes for rational reasons, sometimes irrational reasons. So when you decided to take the vaccine, you said that you did some research. What was it that kind of pushed you into the way of thinking, you know what, this is something that I'm just going to take? What was the thing that made it more likely that you would take it than you'd reject it? Because some of the arguments are compelling. I've seen them myself, even if they're nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was. It's just a matter of degree. I mean, I looked at the sizes of the samples of people that had been involved in the trials. Obviously, as someone from African descent, there's a narrative about not enough of us, feeling like we were involved in clinical trials and whatnot. But I just made myself comfortable just reading about what has happened, what is being tested, what they've looked for, what reactions they look for, and so forth. And I also educated myself on what actually happens during a clinical trial and how much of that happened during this time period. And again, it was just a matter of accelerating the process, kind of bringing the steps closer so that something can happen in a shorter period of time to address a unprecedented global pandemic. And that's the main thing that made me comfortable, is that we weren't jumping steps, we weren't skipping steps, we're not gambling with people's lives. It's more we've just been pushed into a sense of urgency.
Excellent. Thank you very much, because there's often a tendency for people to do what's called confirmation bias, and they tend to look for things that kind of confirm the worst fears, as opposed to looking at things that kind of give the whole picture, a holistic vision.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank all of you for sharing. I'm going to pass on to my co-chair, the wonderful June, and I think we'll move to the next part of this session. There's been many questions.
I'm Philomena. I want to speak. Hi, guys.
Hi, Philomena.
How are you, guys?
Hi, Philomena. Can I come back to you, please?
There'll definitely be space for everyone to interact and ask questions as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. I might need you to continue supporting me because I'm still letting people in. But thank you, Michael. Thanks, Bless and Queen, Philip, for really those powerful stories.
Yes, thank you.
There are some questions on the chat box that we might have for Doctor, but also for some of you who have spoken. Let me just see if I can fish them out. So someone asked, how can we be sure, I think this is for Dimitris, how can we be sure this is safe when we don't know the long-term effects yet? Doc?
Right. So hello, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Dimitris Tsitsikas. I'm one of the hematology consultants at Homerton, looking after sickle cell thalassemia. Thank you to the patients who have already spoken. Those were amazing stories and very good explanations of how they got to their decisions. So when it comes to safety in the long run, the truth is that we cannot talk about the long run because we just started. But that is the case with everything that is new. What we do know is the results from the clinical studies, which have included tens of thousands of people, remember. And as you spoke earlier, and other previous guests have spoken about the speed at which the vaccine came about. What we have to take under consideration is that this was something that hit the whole globe suddenly and has caused a lot of devastation worldwide, which means that the reaction was sort of fitting the situation. It was a global crisis. So what we had was all laboratories, all research laboratories around the world focusing in one thing. Many stopped what work they were doing already and were focusing on one thing, the vaccine. At the same time, what we often don't mention is the thousands of people who put themselves forward to take part in these trials, because you cannot conduct research, you cannot conduct.
So your mom can make white bean or thing like this.
Sorry.
Can everyone please make sure that they mute their mics while we have our guests speaking, please? Thank you.
So what I was saying is that we haven't seen anything like this before in terms of people participation in the clinical trials. We have tens of thousands of people taking part in these studies. And that's why we could get results very fast, because what we had was tens of thousands of people taking part in clinical studies. Wait for you to see the results. You would have tens of thousands of people being part of the studies and being vaccinated and being out in a condition, in an environment that was full of the disease. At the same time, the pharmaceutical companies started producing the vaccine even before the results were out. And that's because governments worldwide bought doses of the vaccines. So there was a lot of investment, there was a lot of money, let's put it simply, put into this, so that by the time the clinical studies are concluded, production has already started, doses have already been produced. So they're not waiting for the results of the clinical studies to roll the vaccines out. So we never had, at a global scale, such a crisis, which had such a response. And that is why the vaccine was rolled out quickly, so quickly. We have very robust evidence that it is safe. When it comes to long-term effects, obviously, you can only talk about long-term effects after a long period of time with certainty. However, we do know that we do know how the vaccine works. The vaccine doesn't work in any different way than any other vaccine we take. It does exactly the same thing. It triggers your immune system to produce antibodies and activated T cells against the virus. It is the same mechanism as the flu vaccine, the measles, anything. So we don't see any long-term effects with those vaccines, and there is no reason why we should see any long-term effects. Obviously, one cannot say anything for certain because it takes time to talk about long-term effects, but there is nothing to make us think of long-term effects.
Callahan was diagnosed with a rare.
Thank you very much for that, and apologies for leaving you to self-introduce yourself. You're a very esteemed member of our community, and many of us have personal relationships with you.
That is very kind of you to say.
So we appreciate that. There is a question here, and I am mindful that Philomena, you also have a question or something you want to share with us as well. So I'm going to ask Dr. Dimitri the question that the group has put forward, and then I'll invite you to share your words with us, if that's okay. So I think the question is, how long does the vaccine last for? And will we need to take it more than 2 times?
Are we talking about 2 times the 2 doses?
I suspect that's, yes.
Yeah. The idea is that the vaccine is given in 2 doses. Having said that, we already know that with 1 dose, there is some protection. We have to bear in mind that we see that protection a couple of weeks or so after the vaccine. And certainly, I think Blessing was the one who very eloquently put it that taking the vaccine didn't make her feel invincible, and she still takes all the precautions she needs to take. She wears her mask, washes her hands, and so on and so forth. And that's precisely the case. We do need to take 2 doses. There is that debate about what nationally is trying to be done is to give to as many people at least 1 dose. And that compromises the ability to give the 2nd dose at the predetermined intervals. However, it appears that this sort of delay, if you like, in the 2nd dose does not really impact on the efficacy of the vaccines, and at the same time allows more people to be vaccinated at least once. But the answer to the original question is that yes, we need to get 2 doses. How long does it last for? Nobody really knows. And I have to point out here that I'm not a virologist or a public health physician, so there is so much I can say, but no one really knows how long it lasts for. It's very likely that we will need boosters. It could be that it is like the flu jab that we need to have once a year. Nobody knows how long it lasts for. No one thinks it lasts. No one thinks it lasts forever. No one thinks it provides lifelong immunity. But there are still things we don't know about it. We know it's safe. We know it works. But there are many things that we are still going to be looking as we roll it out and as more people have it. Data are being collected continually.
Thank you very much. And I think it's very important when you say there are things that we just don't know. You know, we need time to know. And I think that's what leaves a lot of people distrustful of these processes. When we see on the news, we see politicians acting with certainty in a world where we don't know. So it's refreshing. I have some more questions for you.
I think that's a very good point.
Sorry. Be professional, Tony. That was funny. Philomena, please, I think you had something you wanted to share with us. You're muted. Oh, the burp, did you as well?
Yes. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
About Monday, I was not feeling well. I was having a high fever. So I was lucky on the 3rd, I was having an appointment with doctor. So doctor called me and I explained everything to him, and he told me to do the COVID test. So I'm lucky. When I did the test, I was having positive, but my case was negative. So, but thank God, I was not coughing and I can breathe well. And I don't know why, only the temperature was high, 39, at 39, 8 or at 40, but so they usually call me, then I call my GP, and my GP said that they will call me back, but they did not call me back. I thank God the NHS, when they had it, they usually call me at home and ask me, how is it? How is your health? Can you breathe well? But I said, yeah, this is my first time, because when it started, I was feeling cold, very cold in Sunday evening. But I thank God. Now I'm feeling, today is, I think I had it on the, my appointment was on the 3rd with doctor. But when the doctor told me to do the exams, I was having an appointment with Homerton, my doctor. So he told me to do it. So I thank God. Today I'm okay. I think today is at 5 days or 6 days, but I'm feeling okay. So, but the vaccination, I haven't done it. So I don't know what to do. But yesterday to the NHS called me. They asked me what is good. I said I'm okay. But my temperature, I thank God, now is 36.5. So I don't know how to do that. I want to share to doctor, because the day doctor, I had an appointment with her. I'm lucky. He told me, Philo, go and do the COVID test. So when I did it, then I saw it. I've had it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing it. And it's so wonderful to hear that you've come through the other side. It'll be probably good to come back to you to hear your views on how you feel about taking the vaccine now that you've had COVID and you've come through. How do you feel about that?
Yes.
But there are questions that people have. And we also want to invite questions for our wonderful guests who've come in and shared their stories, because there's something to learn. And there's something I always say, when I'm teaching at uni to the students, I make this point: there's no such thing as a stupid question. What happens if you don't ask the question that you're worried about, then you remain stupid. So there's no such thing as a stupid question. If there's something you want to know, no matter how silly it sounds, please, this is a safe space. Ask the questions to whoever. So whether it's Dr. Dimitri, whether it's Philip, whether it's Queen, whoever's here, and we will try our best to answer it. So I'm gonna go through, there's been quite a few questions. Okay, doctor, are we hearing the truth about the side effects and the deaths from the COVID vaccine? And I'll make that even worse for you by saying I read recently about PIMS occurring with young children. And there doesn't seem to be much clarity on whether this is the vaccine or the virus, what's going on there. So I know you're not a virologist and you're not an epidemiologist.
I'm not, but I can answer to the extent of my knowledge. So this is actually more than one question. So the first question was, are we hearing everything? Are we hearing the truth about
side effects
in relation to the vaccine? Am I right?
That's right. That was the first.
Well, yes. What we do have is the results of the clinical studies, and all these are actually published in peer-reviewed journals, which means that when there is a study that is published in a medical journal, and for anything to be published in a medical journal, you have to undergo through a process called peer review, which means many other experts read independently what you have written and express an opinion, accept it or reject it or modify it or make suggestions. And it's a very, believe me, I have gone through it quite a few times. It is a very stringent process. So all these studies, all the results have undergone peer review by independent experts. When it comes when it comes to deaths as a result of the vaccine, we haven't heard of anyone suffering any severe complications or even dying as a result of the vaccine. Are we hearing the truth? There is no reason why we wouldn't hear the truth. I suppose this is a more general statement. It is a natural reaction when we are faced with something so catastrophic, so sudden, so different as we have done over the last year. Our normal reaction is to feel defensive and to feel apprehensive and to feel suspicious of everything that we hear that comes to us. But the truth is that these processes are very tightly regulated. So the UK has MHRA, every nation, the European Union have their own regulatory agencies, the US and so on. So the MHRA, which is the regulatory agency for everything in the UK, they keep very, very strict they regulate these things very strictly, they collect data very strictly, and they scrutinize them. So one couldn't really lie even if they wanted. So the second part of the question was the PIMS, the pediatric inflammatory syndrome. So that was there before the vaccine. And we know that it has affected some children. It is extremely rare. It's got nothing to do with sickle cell. It affects any child potentially, but it's extremely rare. It had been risen as a concern when there was the discussion to begin with that children have no problems from COVID at all. When some pediatricians said, well, actually, a very, very small proportion of children can develop this pediatric inflammatory syndrome temporarily associated with SARS-CoV-19, the PIMS-TS. But one that was before the vaccine, it has nothing to do with the vaccine. This is a complication of COVID-19, but a very, very rare one, but nothing to do with the vaccine.
Can I just add, sorry. So I've worked in the COVID vaccination centres for the past couple of weeks. And what we do, after you get vaccinated, we watch you for about 15 minutes, because usually if you're going to get any reaction, it will be more immediate reaction. And, I had a patient who had an anaphylaxis reaction to antibiotics. And so she came to ask me, okay, I'm really scared. Does the COVID vaccine interact with, would they give me anaphylaxis? And I had to give her the truth. The truth is, I don't know. The truth is, there's nothing documented, but we are very equipped in the center if you have any type of reaction to be able to actually handle it here, there and then. So, in terms of side effects, I've seen loads of people come and go with no side effects, and I've never seen anyone have an anaphylaxis reaction or anything like that. We have a reporting system, which is a yellow card, which usually when, if you do have a reaction to it, you can call your GP, and we do document it, and they take that data for use to, for more research. But at the moment, there's nothing, documented about serious side effects from the COVID vaccine. It's just a vaccine, just to add that for you.
Thank you. Very informative. I mean, I'll ask one question. June, I don't know if you want to take some of the questions as well. I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Thanks, Doc, and everyone who has contributed. Queen, whilst you're on, someone's asked quickly, why are you working and not shielding?
Oh, so I am shielding, but sometimes I do have to go in because I do manage some of the arrangements and stuff. So it is my job to manage some stuff, but most of the time I'm actually working from home. But I do have to go in sometimes, and when I do go in, I make sure I go in when I keep my distance and it's a bit safer. But yeah, it is under. It is. I do get told to go home a lot. Go home, Queen. I'm just like, yeah, I've got my mask on, I've got my jab, I'm fine, I'm invincible, just like Blessing mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. Dimitris, there's a question about the AstraZeneca vaccine. So someone, is this Sophia? Let me just see, sorry, it just moves very quickly. Yeah, so it was Sophia. She says, is there any point in us taking the Oxford vaccine when it gives very little defense against the newer strains of coronavirus?
So that is a question I think that is both very valid, and I think many people have it. One, we still don't know whether it is really less effective against the South African variant. And if you heard on the news yesterday, the WHO has endorsed the Oxford vaccine, including irrespective of variants. So we still don't know what's happening with the South African variant and whether indeed it is less effective or not. One thing that is very important is that we're not in a position, first of all, to pick and choose. And I can tell you that I had the Oxford vaccine. I'm very happy with it a few weeks ago, and I'm supposed to have my second dose on the 17th of March, and I'm more than happy to have it. At the moment, the South African variant is a very small problem, at least in the UK. It is very effective and very safe against COVID and most variants, and the UK variant. And I think we cannot allow concerns about a small part of the problem hamper our attempt to get vaccinated. When the question is there a point having the AstraZeneca vaccine? The answer is yes, there is a point. It does protect. And at the moment, there is uncertainty about the South African variant. It's not that it's certain that it doesn't work or is less effective against the South African variant, which is not a major problem at the moment in the UK. But one thing that is certain is that it's much better to have any vaccine that we know is safe and efficacious than not having a vaccine at all. So even though I fully appreciate the concerns, and I'm sure there will be many more to come. And it's very important to get vaccinated, because when it comes to variants, I can tell you this is not going to be the last one we see, because there's nothing particular about COVID. All viruses will develop variants the longer they linger in the environment, because that's what they do. They multiply in millions and billions and trillions. So eventually variants do develop, and some are more efficient in surviving and others are less. So the only way of actually getting out of this vicious cycle is mass vaccination. So the answer finally is yes, there is great point in having the AstraZeneca vaccine if that is what is offered to you.
Okay, there were some more questions, Jean. I've just seen a hand up. Is it Titi? So I don't know if you want to share your question. If you could say who it's directed to. You're muted. I'm not sure if you're aware.
Sorry, I didn't know I was muted. There I was talking away. As Dimitri probably remembers, I was one of the more dire cases you had in ICU over last year, and I wanted to be part of, I signed up to be part of the trials, just so other people won't have to go through what I went through, because it was really terrible. But what I would like to say is, we're just going to take this vaccine like a flu jab. Every year they tweak the flu jab a bit more so that it is more effective against whatever strain of flu we have. So what I would think is, let's take this one, then they'll work on another one. We'll take it again next year, because they said, you know, it's as new strain comes out, they're going to work on what we have, and then we'll take it. But, you know, as everybody probably know, I'm a card-carrying member of the Take the Vaccine movement. So thank you very much. Just what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you for your honesty, and it's good if we have biases to be upfront about that.
That's a very, very good explanation. I really like that.
That was a very good point. When it comes to variants, the flu virus mutates continually, and every year we have the flu jabs. They are slightly different than the one before, because they match the variants at the time. So that is what every virus does. That was a very good point.
There was one question here, I think, from Jade. So does the vaccine just allow our bodies to handle the virus better?
So what the studies showed was, one, that it stops us from catching it, from getting ill from it. There is also some evidence from those studies that so they compared the people who got the vaccine against placebo, against people who got nothing. And those who got the vaccine got a lot less infected than the ones that didn't get the vaccine. And there is some evidence that even the few that got infected despite being vaccinated, they probably got a milder form of the disease. And that is quite important. So it not only seems to be protecting you from catching COVID, but it looks like that applies to all 3 vaccines that are licensed in the UK. The ones who do end up catching COVID despite being vaccinated, they seem to be getting a milder illness, being less likely to end up in intensive care or even dying.
Can I just add to that, please? Just with the question of what's the difference between the Oxford and the Pfizer vaccine, I just want to say that we shouldn't really get caught up in, which one to take, which one not to take, because they are both have been proven to be safe and effective. They both work in a very, very similar way, just to trigger your immune response and have memory cells to be able to remember that, oh yes, I've been here before, and this is what I did last time to come back to it. Therefore, I know what to do when you are introduced to the pathogen. So it comes into your system in a different way, but it kind of just produces the same reaction for our body to be able to deal with it. So I don't think we should get caught up in, at Oxford or Pfizer or which one. I just think let's just get vaccinated.
Thanks, Queen. That's really helpful. There's a question for Doc from Fajimi. It says, can we have the vaccine when we're in a crisis?
The answer is yes. I suspect it's not going to be very comfortable because the vaccine probably will get you some mild side effects, as the previous speaker said. So there is no contraindication. You're not going to come to harm, but it might actually make you feel more uncomfortable. And I would have thought that if you are in the middle of a crisis, you probably better reschedule your appointment for a couple of weeks later. But that's only for your own comfort, not that there is an actual contraindication.
Thanks, Doc. Another question is around allergies. So I think Sophia is saying she's allergic to other jabs, other vaccinations. So is it safe for her to take the COVID vaccine?
Well, it depends on what allergies we're talking about, one, and what vaccinations she's allergic to. I don't think I'm going to go into details into it. There are things like sort of egg proteins and things like that. Some people are very allergic that are contained in the flu vaccination. These current vaccines don't contain any of that. And it is only if someone has specific allergies and severe allergies, the type of allergies that they had anaphylactic reactions, they carry adrenaline with them. So what I would advise her is, when she is due to have her vaccine, is to have a discussion with her GP regarding with her previous allergies and whether it's safe for her to have the vaccine. Most likely she will be, because it's a very, very small proportion of people who have allergies, who have severe allergies and allergies to the ingredients of these vaccines.
Okay, thanks, Doc. There's another really important question about...
Sorry, Jim, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to chime into what the doctor said. They usually ask you before you have your vaccination if you've ever had anaphylaxis and what you had anaphylaxis to or with, and then they will advise you according to that, just to raise that point.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Blessing. There's another really important one about epilepsy and physical and learning disabilities. Are they vulnerable to taking the vaccine? Doc, that one's for you.
You will take the vaccine. Yeah, no, I get it, but I'm not sure about the question. Is it?
So basically,
whether the vaccine causes epilepsy or
good evening, Doctor. Is it okay for a sickle cell patient who is vulnerable with epilepsy, physical and learning disabilities to have the vaccine?
It is even more important to get the vaccine. The rule of thumb is the more conditions you have, the more problems you have, the more vulnerable you are. Therefore, the more likely you are to have problems if you are infected by COVID. Therefore, the more important it is to get vaccinated. So if you have sickle cell, is more important to be vaccinated compared to someone who doesn't have sickle cell. If you have sickle cell and another complication, it is even more important. And the more you add to it, the more important it becomes to be vaccinated. So yes, absolutely yes, they should be vaccinated.
Okay, I think we'll open it to the floor. If people have any questions for Doc or any of the speakers, please feel free to ask. But there was a question directed to me on text. It says, are we capturing the numbers of people dying from COVID within the sickle community, and what's that data like?
Yes, we do. So that is something that has been published. That there are several sort of not cohort, but data collection sets. The first one was published by the French back in June. Then there was another one from the US later on. There was the UK that was published in November, and there is ongoing data collection from the UK. So what we do see is that one thing that is different about sickle patients compared to sort of the general population is that possibly COVID affects our patients at a younger age. So when it comes to looking at how often people who are infected, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry. Everything was lost from my screen. I thought, oh my God, I got locked out again.
No, we can hear you.
So one thing that we have seen, that's fine. So one thing that we do see is that patients with sickle cell have a higher risk of developing severe disease, having to go to hospital, being hospitalized. If you match them by age to the general population. And it does confirm that our patients are more vulnerable. It's not catastrophic, let's put it that way. So it's not that patients with sickle cell disease, if infected with COVID, the disasters happen, and we have many who spoke already who did have COVID and they were okay at the end. But there are enough data to show that there is our patients can actually get more sick if infected by COVID compared to the general population.
Okay, thank you. There's a few questions in the chat. This is a very good one. I think Queen kind of answered it when she explained about the body creating a response, but it says, isn't the vaccine putting a portion of the virus in our bodies? And why not encourage people to obey the laws of health to build one's immune system? And it cuts off if a person gets. So I think that's the question. How do vaccines work? Are we putting viruses into our body on purpose?
We are not on this occasion. There are different vaccines where you put sort of inactivated viruses or bacteria in the body. Not these vaccines. These vaccines do not contain the virus. None of them. Just in capital letters, they do not contain the virus. All they contain is a protein called mRNA. M stands for messenger. So we all have DNA in our cells, which is all the information, our genetic material. And that information, to go and get translated in the cell, needs these little molecules called mRNA, messenger RNA. So those are the messengers that get the information from the DNA to the cell to do what it's supposed to do. So these vaccines contain mRNA for the spike protein of the virus, which you all have heard about now. And the spike protein is the one that helps the virus latch onto the cells of our nose or our lungs and gain entry into our system. So the vaccines contain mRNA. This molecule, which is not from the virus, is artificially produced, so that we can build up an immune response against the spike protein and recognize it if infected by the virus and fight against it, basically. So there is no vaccine that contains the virus. It's not a part of the virus. It's nothing. There's got no viral content at all.
That's a very important answer, and I think many people hopefully will help clarify.
I think that is a very, very important to be made. We do not get a virus, because there are vaccines that we do get inactivated viruses or inactivated bacteria or parts of them, which again are very safe. But in this case, no, there is no virus at all.
Here's a practical question. I would like to know, after I've taken the vaccine, is it advisable or safe to do or continue my placement as a student children's nurse?
What I would say is that after any one of us has the vaccine, nothing changes in terms of what we are expected to do as the population of our city. So whatever the guidance is for everyone, the same guidance applies to us. There are not two sets of rules for those who are vaccinated and those who are not. Whatever, if you could do something before you were vaccinated, you can still do it. If you were not allowed or supposed to do something before you were vaccinated, you are still as restricted. And that is a very, very important point, because I think vaccination is our main way out of the pandemic, but it's not the only way out of the pandemic. We need to comply with all the social distancing, isolation, and so on. So this is going to be guided by the government as days go by. It will be changing as the situation changes. It has been changing since the pandemic started, but vaccination does not give us a freedom pass, if you like.
I'm going to be a bit cheeky and take a little bit of a privilege here, and you know, you just mentioned something, and I want to add on. It would seem to me that the government is following a path of herd immunity now, and it's not the same as when we first heard about the virus, where it was prepared to risk the lives of vulnerable people. This time, it's trying to vaccinate those who are most likely of fatal results from the virus. But what risk did that pose to those of us with sickle cell when we have, some of us will have compromised immune systems over years of ravaging of the crises, and then on top of that, if we haven't taken the vaccine?
I'm not sure I understood the question, actually.
Okay, so I'm suggesting that
that's probably been me.
That's okay. The government's following a strategy of vaccinating everyone. This is the plan. And so we will reach a point where perhaps maybe 60% of the population has this vaccine and the antibodies. But I'm more concerned, or equally concerned, about what happens to those of us with sickle cell who haven't had the vaccine in an environment where lockdown restrictions, because we said to follow the general rules, lockdown restrictions have been relaxed. Everyone is not really complying with social distancing anymore. I'm trying to find out, does that increase the risk of vulnerabilities to this virus, even though the transmission rate will perhaps be reduced?
So are you saying about patients who have not been vaccinated?
Both.
As the vaccination?
As the population, yes.
So the idea of the herd immunity, because you did mention about the herd immunity, and you said that the government's line is to gain herd immunity. When you mass vaccinate, and that has been the case with all vaccines throughout the history of vaccination, when you vaccinate a significant proportion of the population, then essentially the virus starts receding because it doesn't have anywhere to live. The virus cannot live by itself. The virus lives in you, it lives in me. If you and I are vaccinated, then any virus that lands on us is dead. It cannot pass on. So if you have a very large part of the population vaccinated, then you see the virus actually receding from that community. It will still exist, there will still be outbreaks, but by being vaccinated, you protect yourself and you protect the community as well, because we do build that wall, if you like, that the virus does not have enough bodies, if you like, to jump from body to body. So you have that collective protection for those that benefits those who, for whatever reason, may not be able to have the vaccine. And I don't know if that answered your question.
To a degree. but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay.
June, do you want to do any more questions or?
Yes, we've got a few, but before I take next questions, I think Fumi had her hand up to come in. Fumi, are you still in?
Yeah, I'm still in. I just want to quickly throw some advice that some of our patients, if you do diagnose with COVID positive, probably you haven't come to the hospital. Please, can you let us know so we can be doing follow-up with you as well to check on you? Because some of you have been diagnosed within the community setup, like with your GP, not that you have been admitted to hospital. If it happens like that and they say you are COVID positive, just let us know in MDU and we can do follow-up with you. That's what I just want to add. Thank you.
And can I echo what Fumi just said? That is an extremely important thing. If you are diagnosed with COVID in the community, please let us know. And just as important, if you are feeling unwell in any way, please do not avoid coming to hospital because you're afraid of coronavirus, because that attitude can be actually more dangerous than COVID itself. So these are two very important points. If you are diagnosed with COVID in the community, let us know. If you are feeling unwell, come to hospital.
Thanks, Doc. Thanks for me for that. There's a really important question that keeps being asked. It's about whether there's DNA in the vaccination and whether it causes infertility. Queen said she's happy to take that question. I think, Doc, you can come in after as well.
I don't know about the infertility.
No, I love that one.
No, Queen.
Don't take that from me.
Let me just warm you up. So, like doctors said, mRNA isn't the same as DNA. It can't combine with our DNA to make genetic code. You know, the process of making mRNA is actually from the DNA, and mRNA only lasts for about 72 hours in our body anyway. It can't change our genetic code because the instructions is actually the DNA. So mRNA can't do that. That's my knowledge in that. So I would like Doctor to take the rest.
Thank you very much, because I had a very good joke about it. because I have heard about these sort of theories of what if the genetic material of the virus gets incorporated into our genetic material, which I think is not an unreasonable worry, but it cannot happen. As Quinn said, mRNA, as we said earlier, mRNA is a small molecule, is a messenger that takes the information from the DNA, and RNA can never be incorporated into the DNA, which is our genetic material. And essentially, and that is where my joke comes, it is like you send a postcard to your mother from Paris and suddenly your mother can speak fluently French. That's not how it works. It will not be. The RNA can never become DNA. We're not being injected with genetic material. It's just a piece of information that is enough to tell our immune system what to look for.
Thanks, Doc. Thanks, Queen. There's a question you answered last week. So for the benefit of those who were on the call last week, the question is around, can I have the vaccine when I've had a transfusion, a red blood exchange transfusion?
Yeah, I think it is important to repeat important questions like that, even if we have talked about them before. So yes, absolutely. When it comes to exchange transfusions, especially at the Homerton, we only do automated exchange transfusions. So what happens is your blood circulates through the machine, and it's only your red cells that are removed and replaced with normal ones, and the rest of your blood returns into your body. So there's no reason why you cannot have your normal automated exchange transfusion, whether before or after the vaccine. It doesn't affect it. It doesn't affect its efficacy. It's not going to be cleared. It's not going to be eliminated. It's not going to be, the efficacy is not going to be reduced.
I've noticed that there's two hands up. I think, Titi, you might have left your hand up from before, but Jennifer, I don't know, your hand's up. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question. Is that Jennifer? I don't know if you can, if you're still there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Jennifer. I'm a patient of Queen's Hospital. I do my exchange every 6 weeks. I've had my first jab on the 30th of January. I was just worried, if I've had my first jab now, can I still catch the coronavirus?
Yes. The quick answer to that is yes. Your chances reduce, and as we said, it is considered that it takes 1-2 weeks to start building an immune response. So certainly you're not going to be protected the day after you had the first dose of the vaccine. So as time goes by, after your first dose, your immune system builds up. Your chances of catching COVID-19 reduce as well. They never go down to zero. Never anything goes down to zero. So you are still at risk, even though substantially smaller than what it would be if you didn't have the vaccine. But you still need to do everything as per the rules: masks, distance, avoid going out, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can I just add to that? Because somebody asked me, oh, it doesn't make sense that I have to get the vaccine, then still wear masks and still do these things. Just to remind you about the flu vaccine, for instance, when you get the flu vaccines, you don't now go out in a bikini in winter. You still wrap up warm, you still look after yourself and take your medication. So it's the same thing. Once you have the vaccine, it reduces your chance of getting the virus. It's not a cure, it doesn't eliminate it completely. It just reduces the chance, and we have figures of how much it's reduced by. So just to add that to it.
excellent. Thank you. If you could put your hand down as well, Jennifer, that way we don't confuse you again, but thank you for the question. There's another question in the chat. Doctor, long COVID symptoms combined with sickle cell fatigue. I believe I actually have this. This is what the person's saying. Can you advise how to manage or handle this and ease my chronic fatigue, please? So we have someone who's got both.
That is quite a difficult one. There is little known about the long COVID, and I think that is the kind of thing that we will be learning more and more. And by we, I mean the medical community in general. I think it is important, I don't know if you are my patient or you are at another hospital, it is quite important to speak to your sickle consultant, whether it's me or someone else. And something you need to be discussing with your GP, getting a lot more experience in long COVID. It may be that, depending on your circumstances, and we cannot turn this into a medical consultation, I can just say some general things. It may be that you might benefit from transfusions, depending on what your levels are, but it has to be a plan made in conjunction between your sickle doctors and your general practitioner.
Okay. That's really important that you do that as well, please. So follow up on that advice, because having the combination of both, as you experiencing, isn't very good. There's a question here. Since the vaccine benefits nothing.
Sorry, just one moment. I'm putting my phone to charge.
Okay. Can you still hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so I'll read the question. So since the vaccine benefits nothing, really nothing, no guarantee, how can it protect anyone spreading? It does not make sense. I think the person's asking for your response to this assertion.
So it does protect against something. The question says that it doesn't protect against anything. It does protect against being infected. It doesn't protect 100%, but there is no 100% about anything anyway. And we don't know if it protects completely against passing on. That I agree. Getting infected. And that is already a big benefit. And if we have many people in the community who are protected against infection, that automatically protects the community from getting infected I hope I answered that right or sufficiently.
You did your best. I think that's good enough. June, I don't know. Well, there's a couple of questions.
I'm still trying to put my phone to charge.
Yeah. So can you hear us, Doc? So we'll just take a couple of more questions because we're coming to the end of the event. There's a question about long COVID. So basically, someone thinks she has it, and how can you advise her?
Can we get that one, June?
Okay, do I repeat it?
No, I think Dr. Dimitri, he answered that one.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry. So there's one about can I take the vaccine if I'm planning to have a child?
Yes, absolutely, yes. At the moment, the vaccine is not recommended for pregnant women simply because pregnant women were not included in the clinical trials. And they were not included in the clinical trials because they're never included in clinical trials anyway. But it is recommended that pregnant women that are vulnerable for different health conditions do still get vaccinated. You are not in that position yet. You are planning to get pregnant, so absolutely yes.
Someone has asked, would it affect the baby if they were pregnant?
Wouldn't. If anything, it would be beneficial because the antibodies we form against COVID can pass through the placenta and can pass in the breast milk. As all the antibody, you know, one of the benefits of breastfeeding is that you pass antibodies to your baby. So the antibodies you form against COVID pass through the breast milk. So if anything, it's beneficial.
I think we're on to our last question. I can see a hand up from Joan. So Joan, if you'd like to unmute and share your question, please.
Yes. Hello. My question, you know, I couldn't write it. Maybe it would take too long, and I don't really write too fast. But just to jump on what you said, Doctor, about passing on the antibodies. My understanding of antibodies comes from, like, for instance, when you take the flu vaccine, it's some of the virus they put in you for your body to develop antibodies. How can your body develop antibodies for the COVID vaccine if there's nothing of COVID within the vaccine? That's one last question. But before that,
so as
are you? Should I go on, or are you going to answer that?
Well, I was about to answer, but then I thought you have more to ask.
Yes, I had more to ask. You know, for a person with sickle cell, you know, that refuses to take the vaccine, right? It makes me wonder because shouldn't we be encouraging them to, just as if you're going to have with the flu, they would say take extra vitamin C, you know, keep away from dairy products which build the mucus. With the COVID, it affects the breathing, my understanding, because of the mucus that builds up on the lungs. Now, what can you suggest to say, okay, if you take more vitamin C, or there are other health-related things that you can do, as the first person who spoke about the breathing exercises and all of that, wouldn't there be tips to give so that should in case you get the virus, you can help yourself apart from going into the hospital, apart from depending on pharmaceuticals?
Thank you for the
questions.
Okay.
Thank you for the questions.
Okay, so let's start from the end. So when it comes to whether I have any vitamins to suggest and so on, no, I don't. Having a healthy lifestyle, it's general recommendation no matter what, whether you have sickle cell or otherwise. Having a healthy diet, it's a recommendation anyway. But there is nothing to show that a specific vitamin, a specific food group of foods or anything makes any difference. Going to the first part of your question, as to how we build antibodies, as we have explained, there is no part of the virus, the virus is not injected into us, but the messenger molecule that is injected, what we get injected with is a messenger molecule that then our body can translate, make a protein, and then create antibodies against that protein that when the virus enters, they recognize that protein and they attack the virus. So it does not contain the virus itself. And that's how you form antibodies.
Okay. Unfortunately, it's gone so fast the time, but we're going to have to wrap up now. So I want to give a real special thanks to all our patients who've contributed to the conversation, especially to you, Doc, for answering those questions. I know it might feel like going into a gladiator ring, but your honesty has been very.
It was a real pleasure.
Appreciate
it was a real pleasure. It was so nice hearing from our patients.
Excellent. And Philip as well, thank you so much for allowing us to use your account to actually host this. That's been brilliant. I've seen inside the chats that this has been recorded, so it will be shared. So those of you who want to rewind and go over it, and if there's questions that you have even after this, please note them down. And then if we get to another session and where we're having to address more questions, you can be prepared. The best way to deal with this is not to do it from fear or ignorance, but it's to do it from love and having the answers and I don't want to say intelligence because we're all intelligent people, but it's having that knowledge and that information in front of us. Fear often makes us make bad decisions. If you choose, like Joan was asking, if you choose not to take the vaccine, it's a choice, and that's a valid choice, just as we choose our treatment. But we should do that with the information that we know is right, not information that's based on scaring us into action. But last of all, I want to thank all of you for spending this time asking those questions, contributing some thought-provoking, stimulating ideas. I've learned some more things as well, and I'm a bigot. I thought I know most of this stuff already. I just want to say, please be safe. Go out into the night, do your thing. Make sure that when that sun comes, you're kind of soaking up those rays, because we know how much our melanin loves those sun rays. So even if it's cold outside, try and get some warmth inside. And have a blessed evening.
Sorry, Tony, before everyone goes, can I ask you to switch your camera on so we can have a quick photo? If you want to. And just to say special thanks to you as well, Tony, for helping me and helping us put this together. It was well organized and well hosted. So please, I'm going to take a picture now. If you want to put your camera on.
Thank you, June, as well.
Thank you.
I couldn't have done it without you.
And yeah, really appreciate your time. Hopefully we can have more of these to come. Take care and have a good night.
Great, it was great.
If anybody wants to participate in video recording while taking their vaccine COVID, and they want to show you to us, they want to use to encourage other people, please forward the video to me, please. Or you contact me.
Yes, we are. That's actually quite important. We are preparing a video with patients being vaccinated to encourage more patients, to show patients actually having the vaccine. So as Fumi said, if any of you has any photographs or videos having the vaccine, just send them to Fumi. Because I think patients sharing these moments with other patients is actually a very convincing point.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you,
Later.
everyone. God bless you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.